Well, good morning. This is Peter on a very, very cold November day. I'm finishing up in this first paddock of feeding hay. You can see what we're leaving behind here. This is great. And I have unrolled a bit of that bale right there. And the sheep and the cattle are going after it. And I did make a slight change to this because I had them kind of fenced in along this path, but I ended up putting a fence down through the trees so they could get down that hill where they could get out of the wind, because the last couple days it's been, I don't know, between 5 and 15 degrees and like 30-mile-an-hour winds. Pretty miserable stuff overall. But it's we're heading up on Thanksgiving, so this is cold even for Minnesota in November. Usually it's in the 30s, sometimes 20s, so getting down into single digits is, you know, not my favorite thing in the world to have an extra month of that. But we're grateful for the snow that we've had. We ended up with about 4 inches, give or take. But you can look at this. I've been holding them in this spot because it was a little thin, a lot of weeds. And now it's just full of manure and trampled hay. And probably the day after tomorrow, we'll be feeding that bale there and giving them the grazing that's in here yet. There's some stockpile under that snow that I know at least the sheep will get to. And then we'll move up and feed the bales up on the hill, where again you can see I put them on weedy patches, and kind of let them browse through that. And then we'll make our way down through some of those bales on the hill, and then kind of into where I have the main feeding stockpile, where it was all weeds and thistles. And we're just going to carpet bomb that area and then let it rest for a large portion of the spring. But they're all doing well. I've kind of come through and looked at each one of them, and nobody's suffering here. That's the good thing. We're about a month away from putting the rams in, and I'm looking forward to kind of doing one set of chores instead of 2 sets of chores. We'll put the rams and the dogs in here, and the dogs and the ewes were together initially until I moved them over to the rams as a bunch. So the dogs and the new puppies and the ewes are going to have to figure each other out. And I do wonder how the Highland part of these cows' genetics are going to do, because Highlands tend to be highly aggressive towards canines for whatever reason. So we're going to play it by ear. But here, look, this guy right here just dropped this, and you can see how it's basically hockey pucks. It's way too much fiber. So I started putting in a protein block over there, and they've been kind of going to town on that. And then that's just the one, that's the steer. But here, look, the cow just dropped, and it's a little bit better. So we're just going to provide some additional protein to them so they're getting all they want. And one of the tricky things that I kind of need to keep an eye on is all the stuff I buy is for sheep, because the levels of copper that you'd find in cattle mineral and cattle protein and all that is not good for the sheep. So I do wonder if hopefully the hay that we feed is providing enough trace copper to the cattle, because nothing you buy for sheep has copper in it, even though, as I understand it, they could use a little bit of it without catching damage. But look at these sheep. Look how healthy and thick they are. Pink noses, pink rims around their eyes. These all came out of the ram we bought from Greg Judy. They're gonna all give us some lambs this next year. But we have a lot of winter left. Usually in Minnesota, I plan to feed hay until the end of April. That's just how long it takes the grass to get going. And this year it took us until May, because it was such a cold spring that the grass really didn't get going until May. So Luckily I have, you know, my neighbor Doug, who is always, he always has extra hay. Like, he told me, he's at the end of the year, I said, do you have any hay left? And he goes, yeah, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 squares, you know, small squares. And then I know he put aside a bunch of extra rounds, and I told him I'd be interested in buying them if I need them. So it's always good to have those relationships with the people in your community. I kind of feel bad for, like, reading about the people in Texas who had to, like, ship hay in from the East Coast or from up here, or, you know, whatever. It must increase the cost tremendously to be freighting hay around. When I need hay, I go 2 miles down the road to Doug's farm, and, you know, he even helps me put it up on the trailer or on the truck. So anyhow, the weather's going to start looking up here. Looks like we're going to get back to the 20s, maybe even hit 30 degrees once or twice this week. I'm looking forward to it, so I can stop dressing like I'm living in the Arctic tundra before Thanksgiving. But that's about all. Oh, that one sheep, my daughter and I talked, and we peeled it out of the herd, and it's sitting in the corral, and we're gonna put it up for sale probably today. So I was surprised. You know, she's a young lady, and I was kind of wondering if she'd get sentimental about her first lamb that she ever had, and nope, she just said, fence jumper's gotta go. So I've been training her well, I suppose. But I do like some of these ones with just a little color in them. The ram we got from Greg Judy's all white, so when I bought in some additional ewes this year, I tried to get some with a little more color, and we're gonna see what we can do. And that ram, he's gonna get cycled out next spring. Pardon me. And we're gonna keep one of his offspring and sell the mom and sell him, just to freshen things up a bit. And then on top of that, we've layered like a purebred Katahdin ram underneath him, and then he'll obviously be older, so we're gonna push a little more Katahdin back into the flock, and then come back with some more St. Croix, and just continue to select for the traits that we want, which are basically make a good lamb, that lamb has some meat on it, and that they're bulletproof, that we aren't having to put a crutch underneath them. But yeah, that's about it. I think I'm just gonna sit out here and watch the sheep for a little bit, and then head on in and get a cup of coffee. Well, it's the next day, and I've moved them out of that little paddock where I'd fed I think about a bale and a half, and opened up some new grass, a stockpile. You can see I put the fence that kind of before those next bales up there, and I am just unrolling a little hay for them. And it's very interesting because you see, sorry, I'm out of breath because I was pushing this bale by hand. I just got lazy and decided to roll it out by pushing it. But most of my sheep seem to be preferring the stockpile, and you can actually see them pawing through the snow at a certain level. And my observation of sheep has been they will paw through a certain level of snow, perhaps even more than the cattle. And then I just have a few of the older ones actually. Actually, all 3 of these sheep that are on the hay are some of my older ones, which is really interesting. And then the cattle, of course. But it is a much nicer day today after this bitterly cold weekend. It was, golly, I want to say down in the single digits for a while, and now it's in the 20s. So I'm just out in my shirt sleeves. It feels really good. And there's no stress on these animals. We're about 3 weeks from breeding, I think, right? What's today, the 21st? So on the 15th of December, we'll put the rams in. And next week, all the weathers are going away, so that should simplify my life quite a bit. But, you know, there are moments in Minnesota winters where it sure is beautiful, and it's a nice sunny day, and it's not too cold. None of these girls are struggling, that's for sure. I might take a walk, not walk on their hay. So they'll get about this much. You can see what's left of that bale. You know, it's I don't know, let me see, about hip high. And I'll feed them a little bit today, and then they'll eat I'll unroll the rest of this over the next couple of days, and then they have stockpile too, so they're not going to be hurting for food. And then we'll feed that bale, and then we'll send them up on top of the hill. And I think I have 6 bales up there, so that should be 3 weeks of hay and stockpile up there. And then we send them over the hill that way, have some more bales on the hill, and then we get into the main repair area where you can see those big piles of bales over there. But they're focused on eating, and I was a little concerned about them getting enough protein, so I put out a sheep protein block, and they nibbled away at it. But I've had other times when they have needed protein, and they'll demolish that block in a matter of a day. So that tells me that we're doing okay. I like watching them paw through the snow to eat. It's really interesting. It's so bright out I can't actually see my screen, so I hope I'm aiming at what I want to show you. Yeah, with the snow and the sunshine, even with sunglasses on, it is very, very bright. But the cattle are nice and fat. Unfortunately, it looks like and I don't recall if I mentioned this before, but our family cow that she gives us calves that we use for our own beef, she miscarried, it looks like, in the last couple of days. So I'm gonna have to do what I don't want to do, which is source a calf, like a bottle calf or something, next year. And the reason I don't want to do it is it seems like it's hit or miss whether they learn my fencing rules, and I have had much more success from learned behavior from, you know, where the calf learns from the mother and that sort of thing. So I'm not very happy about that, but you know, it happens. You know, I talked to Doug, and he said when he used to AI his dairy, I think he said it was like 20% of them would fail, and he'd have to redo them. So, you know, it's just bound to happen with AI, and that's kind of the price you pay of not having a bull. Is, you know, if it was a bull, he'd just go again. But we're gonna have to wait a year. What's really interesting is this is a 3/4 Highland and quarter Angus out of her, and she's pulled, and I was not sure what was going to happen with her, but now I'm starting to see her horns poke out, so she's going to be a horned critter, which I don't mind at all. The horns on the Highlands that I had didn't bother me. They're smart animals, and they know where those horns are at all times, so I've never been hit by a horn. And my observation is the polled animals tend to be more kicky because that's what they have. So we'll see. But this hay I got from Doug is just, look at how it's soft and green. It smells like summer to me. And they're enjoying it. Look at this steer. He's up to his head in the hay. And my oldest ewe is just hanging out with the cattle. Isn't that something? And then this is her daughter right here. She's 2, I think, maybe 3. I can't recall. And no one's hurting for food. It's been fun to watch this calf, who is extremely skittish. She's starting to allow me a little closer. I'm about 3 feet from her now, whereas before she wouldn't let me closer than 10 foot or so. And there's her, but her mom's very tame, and she'll come up and let me handle her. And you know, she might move off, but she doesn't care if you put your hands on her. But majority of the flock still isn't on the hay, which means they are interested in what is out there. But have a good day. I'm gonna finish up my chores and we'll go from there.